So the 2000s were definitely an interesting time for the Resident Evil series. Because in the early 2000s, Resident Evil 1 was remade and released on GameCube, and was of course followed up by a prequel called Resident Evil 0. So, how good was this game? Well, 0 has often been referred to and kind of seen as a bad game or a forgotten entry in the series. I mean, Code Veronica gets talked about much more, as there's a lot of demand for a remake, but I want to take a look at Resident Evil 0 and kind of discuss what I feel about the game. So, obviously, do be warned that there are spoilers for this game as well as Resident Evil 1. So, let's get into the review. Now, the story takes place pretty closely to the original Resident Evil. The Ecliptic Express, a train, is pretty much attacked by this giant leech monster, and it pretty much hits the fan, and that's pretty much like the story so far. Obviously, in this game, you're playing as Rebecca Chambers or Billy Cohen. Rebecca is a part of STARS, and is pretty much tasked with trying to find Billy, a convict that was falsely accused of some murders he didn't commit. Billy Cohen was a former soldier in the military, and pretty much charged with a crime he didn't commit. Of course, we find out more about that later. And the rest of the game is just trying to basically just get out of chaos. That's pretty much it. So, I guess what are some positives and some negatives about this game? And, how do I really feel about this one? Obviously, to start with the positives, we of course have, obviously the HD remaster. This is the one I'm reviewing. I'm not reviewing the original. The HD remaster definitely does improve, obviously the graphics, and I think it gets rid of the tank controls, because from what I've heard, the original version of 0 did have tank controls, which I'm honestly glad that the HD version doesn't have those on, or doesn't have them, because honestly, tank controls, they're not bad, but they can get quickly tedious. I gotta say, for the most part, the story is just okay. I pretty much see Resident Evil 0 as just kind of filling in some gaps between 1. And when I mean that, I mean like, there's really barely anything that really needs to be explained. Resident Evil as a story makes perfect sense. Resident Evil 0 just kind of feels like they had a few ideas for a prequel and just decided to go for them anyways without really having a story to tell. So, onwards to the enemies. I gotta say, the enemies in this game are pretty cool. They're, as usual, there's zombies and dogs, but there's also several bug-like enemies, and then, of course, the leech monsters. They're pretty cool. They're definitely a very unique enemy, but one of my only complaints with this one is that there should have been more enemies in Resident Evil that should have appeared in this one, such as Crimson Heads and the Chimera. The Hunters, I don't know if they're in this game, but of course we do have this other reptile, amphibian-like being called the Lurker, and yeah, it's a very fun thing to come across. But I definitely wish that they had more enemies in Resident Evil appear in this game. I mean, especially considering this one did come out after the remake, and it feels like they could have done that in a remaster. And another negative I have is, of course, obviously the item management in this game. There's no item boxes in this game, so you're just going to be leaving a lot of stuff on the floor, and you're going to be doing quite a bit of backtracking to recover it if you need it at a later time. So obviously in this game, you're going to have to know exactly where everything is, and pretty much just kind of know when to use your items or not, because bad planning can kind of screw you over in this game. But all in all, Resident Evil Zero is a fun entry in the series. It's definitely one I do recommend trying out, but to be honest, out of all the early 2000s Resident Evil games, I kind of think I would prefer the remake over this one. The remake definitely, the remake kind of has a justified existence. This one, it's just, let's just kind of think of what could have happened for Becca before Resident Evil 1. It just kind of feels like that. But I do like parts of the story. It's great to see Wesker and Birkin in this one, as it kind of, I mean, it definitely feels a lot like a fan service game. It doesn't really feel like it has anything to add, but just shows us a bit of the background for what was going on in these games. But that's all I have for this one. I'll of course be back in a day or two with a review of the Resident Evil 1 remake and director's cut. So stay tuned for that one.